You're drifting through a kelp forest, and something is already watching you. If you were prey here, you'd never see death coming. This creature doesn't chase, doesn't roar, it disappears. A living illusion so perfect that predators swim past their own killer. What is this dragon of the sea? And why is its camouflage one of the most dangerous survival weapons in the ocean? Stay with US because what you're about to see explains how animals survive by becoming invisible.
Beneath the waves of southern Australia lies an enchanted forest, a kingdom of secrets and masters of disguise. Here, an extraordinary creature exists, blending so perfectly with the weedy sea dragon's surroundings that it almost disappears. This is the Weedy Sea Dragon, a true artist of camouflage and a relative of the seahorse. The Weedy Sea Dragon's entire body is a masterpiece of deception, designed to mimic the Weedy Sea Dragon's home. The Weedy Sea Dragon's eyes move independently, providing a panoramic view of the Weedy Sea Dragon's underwater world.
These intricate appendages are not for swimming. The Weedy Sea Dragon's fins do that. These are purely for camouflage.
Propulsion comes from tiny, almost invisible fins that ripple constantly, giving the Weedy Sea Dragon a ghostly drift.
To potential predators, the Weedy Sea Dragon is just another piece of floating seaweed, utterly unremarkable and safe.
The Weedy Sea Dragon's disguise is effective from every angle, providing constant protection in a dangerous world.
The Weedy Sea Dragon's movement is a dance of imitation, a slow waltz timed to the rhythm of the ocean.
The Weedy Sea Dragon's diet consists mainly of tiny crustaceans, like mysid shrimp, which are difficult to see. To hunt, the Weedy Sea Dragon relies on stealth, approaching the Weedy Sea Dragon's unsuspecting prey with infinite patience.
With a sudden snap, the Weedy Sea Dragon sucks in the Weedy Sea Dragon's meal like a vacuum cleaner.
This feeding technique is so precise it barely disturbs the water, allowing the Weedy Sea Dragon to feast unnoticed.
Weedy Sea Dragons are mostly solitary, but their paths cross in these vast underwater forests, especially during mating season.
Courtship is a beautiful, synchronized dance where the pair of Weedy Sea Dragons move as one through the water.
In a remarkable role reversal, the female transfers her eggs to the male for incubation.
The male Weedy Sea Dragon will carry these precious eggs for about a month, becoming a dedicated, expectant father.
The male Weedy Sea Dragon's sole focus is now protecting the next generation, carrying the future on the male Weedy Sea Dragon's tail.
Over weeks, the bright pink eggs darken as the tiny Weedy Sea Dragons develop inside, ready for life. The moment of hatching approaches. Inside each egg, a perfect miniature of the parents is ready to emerge.
The young emerge, fully formed and independent, ready to face the vast ocean from their very first moment.
The father's duty is complete. The young must now rely on their own innate camouflage to survive. From birth, the young Weedy Sea Dragon is independent, a tiny jewel navigating a world of giants. Survival instincts are immediate. The art of camouflage is not learned. It is ingrained in the young Weedy Sea Dragon. The young Weedy Sea Dragon must hunt immediately, feeding on microscopic zooplankton to fuel the young Weedy Sea Dragon's growth.
The Weedy Sea Dragon's home is unique, found only in the temperate coastal waters along Australia's southern shores.
These kelp forests are vital ecosystems, supporting a staggering diversity of life, with the Weedy Sea Dragon as a resident.
But this delicate world is under threat. Pollution and human activity endanger the Weedy Sea Dragon's fragile home.
Habitat loss is the greatest danger. Without these kelp and seagrass beds, the Weedy Sea Dragon cannot survive.
These gentle creatures are at the mercy of a changing ocean, facing challenges the Weedy Sea Dragon's camouflage cannot hide from.
Fortunately, the Weedy Sea Dragon is a protected species. Scientists and conservationists are working to safeguard the Weedy Sea Dragon's future.
Marine protected areas provide safe havens, allowing these unique ecosystems and the weedy sea dragon to flourish.
By protecting the weedy sea dragon's habitat, we ensure these living works of art continue to grace our oceans.
The story of the Weedy Sea Dragon is a reminder of the intricate beauty and fragility of our planet's oceans. A creature of myth and magic, the Weedy Sea Dragon is a testament to the endless wonders of evolution. A master of disguise, the Weedy Sea Dragon vanishes as mysteriously as the Weedy Sea Dragon appeared, a secret keeper of the sea.
At rest, the weedy sea dragon can use the weedy sea dragon's tail to hold on, saving energy in the constant ocean surge.
Every aspect of the Weedy Sea Dragon's form is a brushstroke in a larger evolutionary painting of survival.
Even at night, the weedy sea dragon's life continues, a slow and silent dance in the deep.
The weedy sea dragon's skin itself is a canvas, painted with the colors and textures of the weedy sea dragon's home.
The weedy sea dragon's stillness is as important as the weedy sea dragon's appearance, making it invisible to neighbors.
The weedy sea dragon shares this world with its cousin, the even more ornate leafy sea dragon.
Aquariums play a vital role in education, inspiring a new generation to care about these incredible animals. Captive breeding programs are crucial, creating a safety net for wild populations of the weedy sea dragon.
Against a plain backdrop, the Weedy Sea Dragon's unique and bizarre form is truly appreciated.
Life in the coastal shallows is not always calm. The weedy sea dragon must endure powerful surges and storms.
Resilient and adaptable, the weedy sea dragon weathers the ocean's changing moods, a true survivor.
As day turns to night, the world of the weedy sea dragon transforms, but its slow, graceful life continues.
A living jewel, the Weedy Sea Dragon embodies the wild, mysterious beauty of the sea. Even this master of disguise is not immune to smaller troubles, like tiny parasites seeking a ride. The Weedy Sea Dragon uses the Weedy Sea Dragon's environment as a tool, a natural way to stay clean and healthy.
While sharing a similar form, individual weedy sea dragons can show subtle variations in color, each one unique.
The weedy sea dragon's slow pace belies a quick ability to react to immediate dangers like a drifting jellyfish.
The weedy sea dragon's entire existence depends on the health and growth of these dynamic underwater forests.
The fathering Weedy Sea Dragon actively tends to the eggs, providing vital oxygen to the developing young. Through the Weedy Sea Dragon's eyes, the world is a shifting maze of light and shadow, a perfect hiding place. The kelp forest is full of life and motion, yet the Weedy Sea Dragon remains an island of tranquility within it.
The weedy sea dragon's pipe-like snout is a highly specialized tool for a very specific and tiny type of prey.
Like the seahorse, the Weedy Sea Dragon belongs to a family of fish where males carry the young.
While preferring kelp, the weedy sea dragon's range can sometimes overlap with other vibrant marine habitats.
The Weedy Sea Dragon's unique beauty has made the Weedy Sea Dragon a favorite subject for underwater photographers worldwide. The play of light and water provides an ever-changing cloak, enhancing the Weedy Sea Dragon's natural disguise. In moments of rest, the Weedy Sea Dragon conserves energy, becoming just another silent part of the seascape. Life here moves at a different pace, a tranquil rhythm set by the tides and the currents. Beyond camouflage, small spines offer the Weedy Sea Dragon a modest defense against any predator that gets too close. Life adapts, and the Weedy Sea Dragon will colonize any suitable structure, even the remnants of our world. The Weedy Sea Dragon's respiration is subtle, a tiny gill opening performing the vital task of breathing underwater. A long life in the ocean leaves its marks, each tattered lobe a testament to storms weathered and dangers escaped. Conservation is also a science, requiring constant monitoring to protect the delicate balance of the Weedy Sea Dragon's home.
Responsible tourism helps fund conservation and raises awareness, turning spectators into guardians of the ocean.
While shy, the Weedy Sea Dragon possesses a quiet curiosity about the strange world that sometimes visits. The Weedy Sea Dragon's grand appearance hides a delicate frame, typically growing no longer than 45 centimeters. In slow motion, the Weedy Sea Dragon's every movement becomes a hypnotic dance, a perfect fusion of creature and current. The Weedy Sea Dragon is a symbol of nature's artistry and the hidden wonders that still exist in our world.
Is the Weedy Sea Dragon a creature pretending to be a plant, or a plant that learned to dream?
The Weedy Sea Dragon's world continues, a delicate balance that depends on our care and respect.
Life finds a way. The future of the Weedy Sea Dragon drifts onward, carried on the tail of a father. A true master of disguise, the Weedy Sea Dragon reminds us to look closer, for magic is everywhere.